Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and in today's journey through the star map, we're stopping off in what's said to be a beautiful place, and that's going to be known as Goss. Goss is a binary system with two K-type stars that are in a really close orbit to each other that are embedded in this massive nebula, which ends up providing these everlasting bands in the sky of turquoise and bright orange and gold. And on many of the planets, there's also natural waterscapes and landscapes, and all in all, it's said to be one of the best places to visit for scenery and tourism in all of the known galaxy. The name is even rumored, which is kind of a funny little story, to have come from what the captain said of the ship that discovered this system for the first time. Apparently, he jumped in, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "Gosh!" And as cute of a story as that may be, you'd be best suited to probably keep that anecdote to yourself because the locals actually treat that as a huge insult and are probably willing to fight over it. So we don't get a whole lot of backstory on how or when the system was actually discovered, but we do know that from early on it was home to a large majority of religious parties who came here quickly with desires to get closer to their god. Now today, the system is primarily focused around tourism. However, this is still a very popular shore leave destination for military men and women who've been in space for extended periods of time. The information on the system does give us some very critical information in what to expect, which I really appreciate. For example, we know that the system ends up primarily being self-sustaining, and cargo hauling then has very limited value in a large scale, so it's best to leave ships like the Hull series at home. That being said, similar to Elite's rares trading routes, the system does offer a lot of kind of kitschy, trendy, valuable, small quantity items that even someone in maybe an Aurora could maybe turn a pretty profit on. Things like handmade goods or touristy items, or even some animals like the Gossian Midas fish, which we have in our fish tanks today for those of you that have fish tanks. It's even said that some of the more restricted life forms that are exclusive to this system can make people rich if they don't mind living outside the law and doing a little bit of smuggling. Now, does that end up meaning that you're hauling some crazy jungle tiger in the back of your Cutlass? Maybe. Sounds dangerous, could be fun, but it could mean a good profit for you as well. Goss 1, which doesn't really have any real name to it, is unique, and it is interesting. Are you ready for this? It's an innermost planet that is actually the breadbasket to the rest of the system. That's right. You can actually land on an innermost planet, not die, and things are happening. My mind is blown. It's so different from everything else. Goss 1 has mountain ranges with all sorts of minerals on it. There's large prairie regions with farming happening. And those farmlands are actually so large that they end up growing 98% of all the system's food here. And that's the primary reason there isn't a real need for large-scale cargo hauling. Since the goods here do need to get to the other planets, there is a small demand for haulers to take the kind of short in-system trips with goods. But the work is said to be mind-numbingly boring and not pay well. And one other unique statement is that there's no ocean here, which is kind of weird for a farmland type of body. But the sole real body of water is actually like a Mediterranean-sized water source that's actually stagnant and has really hardly any life in it. So there you have it. We have an interesting first planet. Goss 2 is known as Cassel and is the home to countless resorts and plays host to hundreds of millions of tourists every year. And unlike the first planet, Cassel is 85% covered by oceans that are just filled with all sorts of life and that attract a ton of interest. And the land that isn't covered by water is covered by rainforest with a lot of life on its own. The planet is one of the most interesting ecospheres in all of the galaxy that we've explored, hosting hundreds of thousands of complex species. Now, one of these, some of us have in our fish tanks, and that's the Midas goldfish. And I've mentioned that before, but the thing that makes the Midas goldfish interesting is it's not like an orange goldfish like we're used to seeing. This thing's actually a gold color. And in addition to that, we also hear about things like the Erie Lang crab and the Z whale. And I'm not sure what that Z stands for, but if it follows popular culture, there may be some zombie whale roaming the ocean. But it is hard to get a license to ship these animals off the planet, but that's where the black market and smuggling we talked about before really come into play. Now, most of the resorts can be found along the beautiful coastlines and is also home to the system's famous nightclubs. And these nightclubs are famous among the servicemen and women coming here to unwind, and they do like to party. so much that they like to party that it's actually advised that you avoid the areas where the military is, especially when they're in town, because all the commotion that they cause. And law enforcement actually ends up kind of turning a blind eye off if they're, when they're just off duty and having a good time. Goss 3 is a small planet that's mostly undeveloped at this point. However, it is a subtropical place. The planet has a medium-sized naval base focused around retrofitting ships and outfits, and is home to one of the larger military hospitals in the galaxy. Now, with such a military focus on this UE-owned planet, it's pretty much off limits to civilians, with the exception of those licensed to do business here. The hospital on this planet is actually one of the most desired places to end up if you were to end up wounded fighting the Vanduul, basically just based on its proximity to all the desired places over on Cassel. Now, it is worth noting that the beauty of the nebula that draws so many people here for good reasons also has kind of a dark side, and that is in the Olympian pool. That portion of the nebula actually provides an especially effective method to really stay hidden from anyone that's trying to find you. And it's actually become such a hotbed of piracy that it's believed that somewhere hidden within the pool is a pirate base that plays host to an active black market and home for narcotics operations. It's also a rumor, but it also seems pretty likely, as conducting piracy options kind of just against people doing legitimate trade of valuable goods with a nice place to hide seems pretty reasonable to me. It's suggested that everyone avoid this portion of space, but also been because there's rumors that the UEE actually goes in there and trains to some of their newer pilots by allowing them some free target practice against the pirates that are hiding in there. Again, that's a rumor, but again, it sounds interesting enough to be true. So let's wrap this up with a quick who wants to come to Goss. And I think everybody's going to want to come here, at least just to see it. But outside of that, we get a lot of good information already, including anyone being able to take on small-scale trading here. Pirates have an obvious way to do well here. And potentially bold bounty hunters could try and find that pirate base and cash in some of those warrants. Either way, I think there's going to be something here for a lot of people, but I think what we see is there's probably not going to be a whole lot of in-space mining and a whole lot of in-space trading. Outside of that, I think we're probably kind of opening up the system to whatever you find profitable. So that's the Goss system. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and stay tuned for more. Take care.